What's happening? Andy here. I am joined today by Paul Banco and Ben Manning of ETHERFAX. How you guys doing today?
We're
We're
doing
great, Andy.
well.
Good to see you. What's happening? What's happening? First, let's just revisit a little bit. We saw you, Paul, a couple weeks ago at the CDA Dealer Meeting conference. It was in Cincinnati. That was actually your company's first meeting of that sort. You haven't done really any of the peer groups or BTA meetings before, so welcome. That was exciting to see you guys there. Tell us a little bit about EtherFax and what did you think of your meeting there?
It was a great meeting. It was a great conference altogether. It was my first time there, obviously. I kind of went there last minute. Two colleagues of mine were there, Ken Romo and Jennifer Greco, who really managed that side of our business. I thought the conference was really well run, well put together. It was very intimate, which was really nice. It wasn't, like this big, massive conference. Like you actually had an opportunity to really sit down and talk to people. So we're going to certainly, do it again, and looking forward to the next one. And it was great to see you there as well.
Yeah, it was great to actually meet in person finally. It was a good couple of days. We they had a security breakout session, or well, the first day or so was all security based with not security so much, but just managed services in general with their MTA group. And you were there for the full meeting, so for the MTA side, and then also the CDA owners part, which was after. So they did spend some time talking about security, and then we were talking about an article that you had posted on LinkedIn that we'll share a link in the bottom of that, but it spurred some, the idea of maybe we should do a video and discuss a little bit about some of the issues out there with data and security and just in general breaches that are going on and where things stand. So just maybe Ben, why don't you give us a little bit of background on who is EtherFax? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so we are really what we are built the entire foundation around what we call our Secure Exchange Network. So connecting any two agnostic endpoints across a network, getting rid of what you would call traditional fax over telephony. So not two modems hissing at each other anymore. It is putting fax boards in the cloud and moving documents back and forth at the speed of digital. So we really, as Paul would like to say, if he had a crystal ball 20 years ago when he started EtherFax, he would have named it something different. We're so much more than fax at this point. We are a secure exchange network, a software-defined network, if you will, allowing any two endpoints to connect and exchange any type of documentation, and really getting in more away from faxing. We're creating what we're calling the off-ramp from fax and the on-ramp to interoperability. And in that off ramp from fax, it's really the idea of document exchange versus simply faxing something back and forth. So that's kind of where we are in terms of the company and where we're going.
So I mean, Paul, how is fax still even a thing? How
It's a great question.
it just
We ask
won't go
ourselves
away.
that every day.
It's the original way to move documents back and forth between businesses. It was still in its heyday when I was selling copiers, and but how is it still a thing?
Yeah, the simple answer to that is it just works, right? So if I need to get a document from A to B, especially if security is part of that document transport, I can't just throw it into an email. Email is not secure. Secure email is really complicated to try and get through. It's the exchanging of keys and all of that information on the back end, and I have to have the key to open it. Whereas fax just works, right? It has just worked for a long time. If I have a document and I need to get it from point A to point B, we all have an identifier, as we like to say. You've got your cell phone. That is your unique identifier, your cell phone number, right? And so a fax number is a unique identifier. I can identify who it's going to. In the same sense, if I'm getting a document, I can identify who it's coming from. And at the end of the day, type in 10 numbers, hit the shiny green button, and it just goes and it just works. It is simple and it is easy. And also, with EtherFax as a backbone, it is secure all the way across. So, yeah, it's even in today's day and age. This is why people are still faxing.
It's
So
easy.
how is it more secure, Paul? How is it more secure than just, let's say, scanning? Everyone's got scanning now. Everyone's got email, right? What's the difference? Layman's terms.
Yeah, it's a
Like
interesting.
fax is still legal for so many things, whereas scanning and just emailing documents is not, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, an email is not HIPAA compliant in the healthcare world, but faxing is HIPAA compliant. So,
Yes.
you've got that going for you as well.
right. The idea behind it, and I often struggle with this, in terms of security, right? The transmission can't be altered, right? Or it can't be altered in transmission. I mean, that's really the layer of security behind the fax. And I would argue that in today's day and age, it needs to be better, right? It 100% needs, but it needs to be as simple, but it needs to be better on the security aspect side of things. Which is really where the Secure Exchange Network for EtherFax comes into play, because we have control of the entire path of that document, where we can completely encrypt that tunnel. And then for added levels of security, if you really want to go crazy and wild out there, we can throw some end-to-end encryption out there as well. But going back to why is fax still here today, I think the number one answer, or the number one reason for it, is its simplicity. Right, it's ubiquitous. It's I don't have to worry about interoperability between systems. Is your system going to be able to ingest the data of what I'm sending you? I can walk up, put it in. It's secure, and I put in my 10 digits, and it goes, and I get a confirmation it either went or it didn't. That's why it's still so heavily used, especially in healthcare today.
Well, the compliance issues, that's got to be one of the drivers of that. And you wrote this article. It was targeted towards CIOs, and you talked about audits, right? And the importance of audits. Why don't you give us some background on that, and what was what were some of the points that you were making about that for our listeners?
Well, think about it. I mean, if you were to call a service, and you wanted to use let's say an EtherFax type solution, the very first question that you would ask them are you secure? Are you HIPAA compliant? Nobody's going to tell you no. No, we're not secure. No, we're not HIPAA compliant, right? Well, okay, you say you're HIPAA compliant. You say that you're secure. Here's my 1,000 questionnaire Excel worksheet. Please go ahead and fill this out so I can see how secure you are. Okay, so this is what a lot of customers are doing today. And truth be told, all right, we could fill those things out all day. They're time consuming, and I could put anything and everything in there that you want and hand that back to you. And then you can, put your little checkbox and say, well, they're secure and they're going to sign this BAA, and, God forbid there's a breach, they're going to, they're going to be financially responsible for that. That's what we're seeing time and time again. Now, for the organizations that are really, really secure and have security prioritized, right, and it's the top of their mind, they're going to just they're not going to just take your Excel sheet of their questionnaire that they say for Word. They're going to say, okay, this is great. Now, what third party audits have validated this information, right? Show me your attestations of compliance. Let me see that you were audited by a third-party QSA for HiTrust, for PCI. Let's see that, because then we know 100% that someone else, a third party, not biased or unbiased, third party looked at the information, you provided evidence, and you are doing exactly what you say that you are doing in regards to securing data. That's where we need to be. That's
exactly. Yeah, and I think on that point, Paul, you've got the numbers on top of your head. I never do. Talk through the number of controls that we have with going through third-party HiTrust attestations of compliance, and then also FedRAMP, the number of controls there.
Yeah,
those are important, right? They're much more in depth than those security questionnaires that we get.
Yeah, I'm looking for so PCI and FedRAMP. I'm sorry, PCI and HiTrust, you're around 390 plus controls. I think HiTrust, and again, I'm not exactly, it's, give or take, 10 or 15 controls, around 420, 430 controls in their R2 version. And then you take a look at FedRAMP, which we're currently in the process of going through right now, and that's around close to 1,300 controls.
Wow.
On top. So, hands down, I applaud HiTrust. I applaud PCI. The fact that you did HiTrust 4 or 5 years ago, they just took your word for it, right? They had a lot of problems with auditors, QSAs saying, "Oh, they provided us evidence," when they didn't provide us evidence. HiTrust has done a phenomenal job of weeding out the bad and bringing in the good, and actually making it harder and stricter to get their certifications, because you're having to present much more evidence to get that attestation of compliance, which is why these certifications are hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to maintain and just to even go through. It's resource intensive, but it does show a level of commitment to who's ever looking at you and how serious you are about security
and credibility. I mean, it's one thing when I say, yeah, like you said before, but when you're confirming your own numbers, right? And I mean, if you were going to lie about it, then you're going to lie about it, and nobody's ever hopefully going to find out about it. But if anything, if there was a breach, right, everyone's going to find out about it, and then your recourse is, well, this person was dishonest, and maybe what else did they lie about? So it keeps everybody on the same page, and I like the idea that it validates what you guys do, right? And so is this something that vendors are doing? Is this something you think dealers could actually go and do on their own? And do they get certified? How do they play into this process?
I think the value of EtherFax is that we get that certifications and those attestations of compliance, and then anybody who's using EtherFax's services, whether it's through Lexmark devices or Rico document scanner devices, anybody that is on our network using our services, any of the documents that are exchanged across our network, they all fall under that HITrust compliance. We operate in a HITrust environment. We operate in a HIPAA compliant environment. So the benefit of working with a vendor like EtherFax on the back end is that you don't have to worry about getting those. Each individual vendor, each individual dealer doesn't have to worry about those security compliances. It comes along with working with EtherFax, and that's I think a large part of the article that Paul wrote was getting to the CTOs and the CSOs and the end user who gets the document into an inbox and they think, well, it's there, it must have come securely. To them, security is an afterthought at best. They just think, oh, there's a document, I'm going to use it. It's the CSOs, the CTOs that have to worry about, did that document arrive securely? Is there some data breach? Think of like an insurance company, a law firm. A lot of our volume is in healthcare. One PHI data breach could shut down an entire healthcare system, hundreds of hospitals in a healthcare system or ambulatory clinics, right? And what does that do in terms of their visibility, in terms of their credibility? That we went with a vendor that nod, wink, wink. Yeah, they said that they were HITrust certified, just trust us, versus going with a vendor that went through this attestation of compliance and yeah, this really is a certified secure network. So that's kind of where we draw that distinction for us.
Paul, you add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from the dealer side of things, dealers, they're on the front lines. Who's the very first one getting a phone call in the event of a security breach? Hey, Mr. Dealer, you told me this was secure. Yeah, well, that's because the vendor told us it was secure. Did you do any due diligence to make sure that they were secure? No. Or, yeah, we gave them an Excel spreadsheet and they answered it. It looked great. So dealers, when they're positioning EtherFax, they know that EtherFax has spent the money. We've provided attestations of compliance, and not only HITrust, but in PCI We've provided HIPAA guidelines, because HIPAA is really nothing more than a guideline. There's no governing body that's validating whether or not you're HIPAA compliant, right? But vendors, when utilizing and pitching ETHERFAX, they know that we have gone through this rigorous process and that we have allocated the resources. We've allocated the financial resources, the manpower on what it takes to get these levels of certifications. So, you could talk to dealers and they'll tell you all day long, we sleep much better at night knowing that you have these certifications.
Yeah, I could see that being hugely valuable, right? So, I guess the advice really is that dealers need to look at who's supplying all of their products, really, especially products that, are security minded, and, secure fax obviously plays into that. So, but you should vet them and find out, what kind of certifications they have and who's provided those to them. That's definitely something that I wouldn't have thought about until reading that article. Right. And how important is that process now as things are, continue to move to the cloud, right? Especially as we get off on-prem.
I mean, more so than ever. I don't think, and I'm not really on the sales side, but I do see the things that come across, especially in when it relates to security, because we actually, like, if we get these massive security questionnaires, we obviously deal size it because it takes a lot of resources. I would say that if we had 50 healthcare deals a month, all right, 47 of them, the very first thing they're asking for is third-party attestations of compliance.
Wow. So
Yeah.
that's becoming a huge deal then.
Huge,
Yeah.
because what do you read about every single day? Hospital breach, data breach, EPHI breach, this and that. Why? Because all we were doing was the checkbox. All we were saying was, here's the questions, answer them. Nobody ever validated them. Now CISOs and CIOs and TISO, who's ever in charge of the security side of things, they're getting smarter and they're demanding and they're requiring more, because we're moving to the cloud. No matter what you say, no matter what you think, no matter whether you like it or not, we're moving there. And healthcare, agree or disagree, but they're the last. They were the last to embrace the cloud. Yeah. So, but now it's more and more.
Well, nobody needs security more than arguably than healthcare, right? So, good opportunity, good conversation. I appreciate you guys taking the time to come on and chat with us about this. This is really enlightening. Any last advice for everybody as we wind down our time here? Paul, why don't you start?
Yeah, 100%. So for anyone that's out there, vendors, customers, validate. Don't just take their word for it just because they filled it out. Don't use the it must be true, it's on the internet type of mentality. Put your vendor through the due diligence, do the due diligence, put them through the process, and require and ask and have them present you with what they're saying that they're attesting to.
How about you, Ben?
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore with that statement. That we put so much weight into going through the third-party attestation of compliance, and if others are not doing that, you have to question: is that a vendor that will stand behind the dealer, and the dealer knowing that, then will stand behind us, and they can do so comfortably, knowing we've gone through all of the time, effort, and the money. It's, as Paul mentioned, it is expensive. But we do it because it's important to us, and we do it because it's important to the dealer. And so I think any of the vendors, any of the dealers, any of the manufacturers out there, don't, like Paul said, don't take their word for it. Ask, but also ask for that third party attestation of compliance as well. That really says, someone else has verified that you're doing this, and that's important.
Yeah, I do want to add one thing, Andy, and this was, we're a very security conscious organization, right? When we built EtherFax from the ground up, we took a lot of what our sister company does in the government side of things, and we put that technology into the EtherFaX protocol service, what have you, into the product line. When we went through our first HiTrust audit, you really get an understanding, like, because we all thought, like, hey, we were great. We had all our I's dotted, our T's, like, we knew what we were doing when it came to security, right? Like, we didn't have to worry about anything. We realized just how vulnerable and the lack of policies that we had from just this one audit. And when we were, it was shocking. And I remember HiTrust, they score you across 19 different domains, right? And you're weighted. And I think you needed, like, back then, and HiTrust, if you're going to watch, just don't quote me, or don't get upset at me. But I think you needed like a passing score of 70. And we came out of the box and we had a passing score of 60 after we did our first assessment. And our QSA, who, by the way, is great, and I'll throw them a plug, Compliance Point, they're doing our HiTrust PCI and FedRAMP. They came to us and said, you guys, not for nothing, you guys were the highest that we've scored out of the box. And I said, well, it's interesting. What do hospitals score? They're like on average like a 30. And I'm like, wait, let me just understand this. My health now, you go and you sign your HIPAA waiver law and all of this and all of that, and nobody reads it, right? And so, knowing that, like, I'm going to go into a hospital, knowing that there's the overwhelming, favoritism is the fact that my data is going to get hacked in this system at what point. But what am I going to do? Refuse medical care?
Yeah. Kind of in a situation, right?
It's like, hey, all right, I'm bleeding out of my jugular.
Yeah.
I
guess I'll worry about that later.
Exactly. So it was just eye-opening for organizations that think they're secure until they go through like a third-party validation.
Well, yeah. Until somebody else looks at it, you companies go like this, and they don't, they don't look outside, off to the sides very often, and they know what they're doing, and they do it day in, day out. But all of a sudden, to have somebody else come in and go through your processes and your practices and, criticize and try to find holes, it's probably something every company should do at some point. So this has been awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing this, and we will catch up soon. And have a great weekend. Good seeing you guys.
Likewise, Andy. Thank you.
Thank you.